Hello and welcome to Township Talk. I am Scott Souther, the host of the show. This episode is the second part in our look at marijuana in Michigan. In the first part, we spoke to Andrew Brisboe of the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. You can find that episode in our podcast feed. Now, there are a lot of questions out there around the legalization of recreational marijuana. And in this episode, we are talking to Adam Dailide from the Bureau of Fire Services. His department are on the front line in inspecting marijuana facilities in Michigan, making sure they are up to code and are safe both for the workers in the facility as well as residents nearby. Today, we will try to share what local officials need to know about the various types of recreational marijuana facilities, including requirements for inspections and oversight and for safety and fire protection. Thank you for coming into the Township Talk studio. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot of questions here about marijuana at MTA. Let's begin with how many reviews? How many reviews have you done so far?
So overall, just grow facilities, processors, done around 300 reviews.
Wow.
And I think with approved facilities, we're up at about 125 approved facilities.
Okay. And how many facilities do you regulate or go inspect?
So it depends on the licensing. MRA, the Marijuana Regulatory Agency, will approve a license and then send it over to us saying this is a facility that's going to be reviewed. And then we wait for their submittal and then we'll review it. So it depends. You know, we have probably 50 that have been approved by MRA that we haven't reviewed yet in plan review. Okay. Maybe they haven't made it to that point yet. So the actual number of what's out there varies.
Yeah, so you're keeping busy is what you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
Is there a difference between the reviews for like industrial hemp versus recreational versus medical, or are they all pretty much the same when you review a facility?
Yeah, so the one thing we look at with occupancy is in the marijuana rules, it gives NFPA 1 of 2018 as our code source. Okay. In NFPA 1, the occupancy for these facilities, grows and processors, come up as industrial. So in the local's eyes, it may be agricultural, it may be commercial, it may be NFPA is more concise, where it only falls under the industrial category. Okay. So we view these specifically as industrial, which varies, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get information out to the townships, because they may look at a grow facility and say, oh, they're growing something, it's agricultural. I'm not saying they can't say that. I'm just saying that when it comes to us, we're going to be more stringent because it will be reviewed as industrial.
And you've been doing these reviews since medical marijuana? Or
yep, so about June of 18 we started reviewing.
Okay. So you've just been continuously keeping busy right all the way through now with the recreational starting up.
Yeah, year over year, we're up over 400%. Locals have the jurisdiction on those. And the Bureau of Construction Code has a list of who has the jurisdiction, or who has been delegated to. The other one, Marijuana Regulatory Agency, they're looking for something in Bureau of Fire Services. Us, we're looking for fire and life safety. So we're all looking for different things, but a lot of things kind of overlap. You know, one is common path of travel. So that's the distance it takes from the furthest point in a building to a point where you have two choices to get out of a building. So in NFPA, in an unsprinklered building, that says 50 feet. If I look at the building code, which is what the locals will be looking at, it'll give them 75. Okay. We're more stringent on that, NFPA, so they have to design to the most stringent. So that's one of the areas where I'm trying to put our information out there so the local jurisdictions have a little knowledge of what we're looking for. Obviously, we'll be more stringent. So.
Okay. So can you maybe walk me through like an inspection or what that experience is like?
For a plan review?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, looking at a plan review, the first thing I'm looking at is, you know, how big the building is. Are they sprinklered? Okay. Is it a grower or processor? Once you get those initial things down, then I'm looking for, if I'm in that building, how am I going to get out? Okay. One thing we've noticed with these facilities is doors are not something that they like. It's just one more way of somebody getting in or out with their product. So the common path of travel is the one that comes up the most. on these plan reviews for fire and life safety. We want to make sure that if somebody's in the building and something does happen, that they can get out safely.
Mm-hmm. And is this different for each of the rooms involved? The provisioning centers, the dispensary, the extraction rooms? I mean, is there something different in each room you're looking for? Or is it just a general?
Yeah, so in the grow facilities, you'll have the rooms that they actually grow the marijuana. They have rooms that are auxiliary to that. They have drying rooms. They have packaging rooms.
Okay.
In the processors, you're looking at extraction, which is a very dangerous room. And also they have packaging. There's different things in there. And then for the dispensaries, those are viewed as mercantile, and we don't do plan review on those, but we do inspect them.
Okay.
So each one varies because they're different occupancies, which make you look at different things.
One of the things I want to go back to is you were talking about delegation regarding around the inspections. Can you say a little about that? Because some of our smaller townships might want to know about that.
Yeah, so some of the local jurisdictions can delegate their jurisdiction to the county or to the state. And state meaning the Bureau of Construction Codes, not the Bureau of Fire Services.
Okay.
So they wouldn't be delegating it to us, they'd be delegating it to the Bureau of Construction Codes or the county, depending on their needs and what they want to do.
Okay, and how would they request that?
I believe that's something that they set up with either the county or the state.
Okay.
And that's where that list from the Bureau of Construction Codes comes in handy because it'll show all the townships and who has the jurisdiction.
Okay, because one of the things that jumped out at me when I was looking at some of the information was that in the regulation rules, it said that local authorities are the AHJ authority having jurisdiction can inspect at any time. So if they're delegating, they would be working with, you were saying, the contractors. Yeah,
so they're delegating their ability to issue the permits and inspect on the permits.
Yeah. And they can do that anytime that they want to? They can just have an inspection? Or is there like a schedule that they should be keeping?
So with the Bureau of Fire Services, we get in at least twice a year.
Twice a year at least, okay.
Anytime there's a change made in the building or new equipment's purchased or they've reconfigured something, we'll need another plan review, which will be followed by an inspection as well.
Would you recommend that time frame for local fire departments that are doing inspections, aim for at least twice a year?
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. The thing we have noticed with these facilities is they're constantly changing, they're constantly evolving, stuff changes. So it's good to get in there to make sure everyone's safe and everything's within code.
Okay. Now, do the local inspectors need to have any special certification or training to do the inspections?
It would be with their permits.
Okay.
Electrical. If they're an electrical inspector or a plumbing inspector, it all depends on who has that jurisdiction, the AHJ.
Okay. Well, let's get back into one of the things you were talking about earlier. What should townships and local officials be aware of around the inspections? Is there any issues around the Michigan building codes around the inspections they should be aware of?
So the one thing with the codes is the Bureau of Fire Services, we look specifically at NFPA 1 of 2018, which is within the marijuana rules. And it also references other NFPA documents, which includes NFPA 101, which is the life safety code. So there's Chapter 40 in 101 and then Chapter 38 in NFPA 1. As for the building code, that's up to the local jurisdiction because I won't look at the Michigan building code at all.
Okay. All right. And what about the sprinkler setup that they should have in these?
Yeah, so in a new industrial facility, the requirement is if the fire area exceeds 12,000 square feet or the overall building square footage is more than 24,000 square feet, then you're required to have a sprinkler system. Okay.
Is there anything the inspectors are looking for?
Yeah, there's several things.
Okay.
One is in grow facilities, you have rooms without any windows with a lot of plants.
Okay.
When those plants grow, your field of vision is pretty much cut to zero because all you see is plants.
Okay.
So one thing we look for is exit signs, emergency lighting. Where can you get out? Because if the power goes out or a fire happens and you have nothing, it's going to be pretty dark and you want to get out. And the other thing we look at the Bureau of Fire Services is that for the responders that come in case there is a fire, you want to make sure they're safe going into these rooms as well. That they don't know your building.
Yeah.
They want to be able to get in and out, and either save somebody or help put out the fire.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the adult rules for occupancy?
Yeah, so one difference in the adult use rules for us, there's still grows and processors and provisioning centers, but there's also two different categories that are basically created under the adult use. One is a micro business, which multiple different occupancies can be in the same building. They could be growing, they could be processing, they could be selling it all in the same building.
Okay.
So that's something new adult use rules are going to...
So that can all happen in one area, the growing right to the selling.
Yeah, so if you think you walk into a McDonald's and you order something,
so it's like
they're cooking in the back.
Brewery kind of situation.
It's almost like a brewery where they're a microbrew.
Okay.
So we're expecting those to be submitted. The other one is a consumption establishment.
Okay.
Which is where people can go in and actually consume marijuana.
Okay.
So that's something else we may be seeing.
So that would be almost more like a cafe or like a coffee shop.
Yeah, like a coffee shop. You go in and you're hanging out.
Yeah. For the listeners, that's Amy, the producer, joining in the conversation. One of the things I noticed when I was researching this was the checklist you have online. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so, it's more for the submitters, but local jurisdictions can take a look at this to see what we're requiring.
Yeah.
It's a real quick hit, front, back sheet of paper that says if you have a grow, this is what we're looking for. If you're a processor, this is what we're looking for. And gives some references to the codes we use and things that we're specifically looking for. It's a real good way to get a lot of information in a very short area.
So this is good for facilities and for local officials, this checklist.
Yeah, it could be useful for both. Wow,
that's a really great resource. Can you tell us anything about fumigation?
Yeah, so one thing we've been looking at fumigation is some facilities swear that they're never going to fumigate, and then there's some that swear by that you have to do something. Mm-hmm. There are facilities in Denver that have actually have bugs that eat other bugs.
Okay,
so they actually put bugs in their room, where some facilities you're just trying to get rid of everything. They're very careful about their plants, and they don't want stuff to go in it. I know I've had to put on a suit, a white suit to go into a building. So they're very careful about that. But the one thing that we have learned is sulfur burners. Mm-hmm. So these pieces of equipment take sulfur, burn it, mm-hmm. which then the sulfur becomes sulfur dioxide. The problem is when sulfur dioxide combines with any liquid, it turns into sulfuric acid.
Oh.
So if you're a first responder, because the building's on fire, you walk into this facility, you don't know maybe that they have sulfur. It's not burning. You now breathe it in. Now you have sulfuric acid in your lungs.
Okay.
So that's something we are definitely not. It's not at a point where we're not allowing it. Mm-hmm. We're making it very, very clear that there's rules for fumigation, mm-hmm. and if you do that, you have to follow step by step what you have to do, because this is some dangerous stuff. Hopefully they find a different way to go about it, but mm-hmm. we have seen some use that. So
it sounds like it'd be really important for local officials and the facilities to have a good relationship to keep those lines of communication open.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've made pretty clear in the past year and a half of doing these reviews and talking to the actual people that are submitting the plans, owners, their lawyers, their architects. Whoever it is, we're on the same team.
Yes. You
don't want your plants going up in flames before they're supposed to, and neither do we. So let's work together to make sure that that doesn't happen. Accidents do happen, but if there's a way to avoid accidents by sticking to what the code says, that's what we're going to try to do.
Okay, great. The MRA has recently released information on the two-step process for gaining a marijuana license. As part of step 2 of the application process, it references an inspection. Now, is this inspection, the initial inspection, is this more detailed than a normal inspection that would be taking place?
So at the end of step 2 mm-hmm. is when MRA approves BFS to start our plan review.
All right.
So I have probably 40 projects that are sitting in that status that we're waiting for MRA to approve the step 2. Okay. So MRA is going to be looking for similar stuff, but different stuff. One thing different is they look for security and surveillance. We don't look for that at all.
Okay. Well, let's go to another point. You're speaking a lot to local officials and fire departments right now.
Yep.
Okay, what are they asking you? What are you hearing a lot of?
I do get a lot of phone calls, and
we do too here.
And I'm more than happy to help out local jurisdictions, and that was half the reason of reaching out to the Michigan Township Association, is that I want to be able to get that information out to them.
Okay.
A lot of times they don't know, what happens in these buildings. They want to put a processor in. What does that mean? There's a lot of hazards that go with processors more than a grow.
Okay.
Because processors, they may be using LPGs or alcohol to do extraction, which you can extract oils and stuff from a lot of different plants. Mm-hmm. Like I live in St. John's, we have mint, where you can extract from mint. It's the same process, but they're using marijuana. But putting these explosive materials, it's a dangerous situation if things don't go as per code.
Okay, so there is that kind of risk there involved.
Yes.
Wow, good to know. Do you have any upcoming presentations or educational opportunities that people should be aware of? Or how would people keep an eye on that, I guess?
So at the beginning of 2019, we did a presentation for all stakeholders.
Okay.
I'm hoping that in 2020 to repeat that with updated information so we can get that out. It hasn't been planned a date yet, but that is something in the works. We have given presentations to local fire departments, local municipalities that have invited us, and we're open to that. So if there's a township that wants us to come by and go over the information, we'd be more than happy to help out.
Okay, how will they reach you guys?
So we can be reached at, my number directly is 517-335-4057.
Okay.
And then you can also find information on michigan.gov/LARA. Mm-hmm. And from that page, there's a link for fire services. And from that page, there's a link for marijuana.
Okay. Our listeners are usually local officials, fire departments, police departments, as well as board members. And looking over what we just discussed here, is there anything that we didn't hit on that they should be aware of?
One thing we look for with submitters is they submit early.
Okay.
They can submit to the locals, and they can submit to us. There's multiple different processes happening at the same time.
Okay.
You were talking earlier about MRA Step 2. Well, during MRA Step 2, you can already get your plans into the Bureau of Fire Services or your locals. These things can happen concurrently.
Oh, okay.
So that's one thing that we like to see, is make sure your plans are in and ready to go, because then once we get the approval to review, we'll get it done.
Okay. So people can start that process early if they need to.
Yes.
Okay.
Another thing we look at, and has been an issue for the last year, it's tough because in the grow facilities, they want to pack as much as they can into the room. Mm-hmm. So we look at aisle widths.
Okay.
So in a new facility, the minimum aisle width is 36 inches.
Okay.
If it was an existing industrial building that they've renovated, then it's looked at as existing industrial, and that allows 28 inches.
Okay.
And that distance is a clear width. Mm-hmm. So it's not where your tables end, because if you have plants on your table, the plants could impose inside that aisle width.
Okay.
So we have been looking very closely at making sure there's enough aisle width for people to get in and out, let alone a first responder trying to get in there. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure there's enough room. So that's one thing that we hadn't touched on that is pretty important. Okay. The other is I put together some one page helpful references. Mm-hmm. I can't publish them because I'm basically quoting code.
Okay.
But it's something I can, if I was asked a direct question, I can hand out this. Okay, here's something on out with. Here's something on common path of travel, right. So that it's a very consistent answer from anybody in the Bureau of Fire Services.
Okay. One of the other questions I have is around outdoor facilities and what you're seeing in relations to greenhouses and the like.
Yeah, so there's multiple different ways they're growing outdoors. So they're growing outdoors just like any farmer would do. But then they also have things called hoop houses, mm-hmm. which are smaller scale, and then they have full-on greenhouses. The one thing that's important with the hoop houses and the greenhouses is that the membrane they're using to cover it up with meets certain fire requirements, like a flame spread of 0 to 25, a smoke develop index of 0 to 450. It has to be tested. What we've seen is a lot of greenhouse manufacturers don't have these tests done because they're used to growing tomatoes, not marijuana. So these rules are real specific. We've seen multiple facilities actually buy the material from the manufacturer and then send it out themselves to get tested. Sometimes that's probably the only way you're going to get the information. But I have been in talks with manufacturers, educating them that this is in this industry, this is what we're looking for. So it'd be good for them to have the information on hand.
Okay. One of the things we talked about off the mics was regarding spray foam and the installation. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so spray foam is used as an insulator for the facilities. A lot of these are pole barns. So they want to spray foam, which is fine. They can spray foam, but it can't be exposed.
Okay.
So they usually have to cover it up. A lot of times they'll do it with drywall or some kind of plastic. If they want to leave it exposed, there's something called an intumescent paint, which is not the most economical way to cover it, but it is a way to cover it. It's a paint that helps with the fire rating. So that's definitely something we look at because exposed cellular or foam plastic is quite dangerous if it's burned.
Okay.
Which also you probably don't want those chemicals around your plants anyway. So.
Wow. Sounds like there's a lot of possibility of different fire hazards around these facilities.
There are fire hazards. I mean, even though they're plants and they're alive and they're most of the time wet, but you also got to remember there's huge lights that go above these things, which produce a lot of heat. And then some of these chemicals like the sulfur, and that's just in the grows. In the processors, there's a lot of different hazards that can cause major problems. One thing we look in the extraction rooms is that the door swings out, because if there's an explosion, you want to be able to push your way out and not open a door towards you. Should have a panic bar, should have an automatic closer. Most of these extraction rooms have exhaust systems, so it's constantly running. You turn on the light, the exhaust turns on, so that if there are fumes coming up, off-gassing, that those are captured and taken out of the space.
Okay.
Because we don't want stuff sparking, especially with equipment.
Okay, so it's good to keep these places inspected, make sure everything's going, and have a good relationship between local officials and the facility so everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, and it's legal now.
Yes.
So let's work together. Then that's a lot of the conversations I have with the owners, lawyers, architects, whatever. It's like we're on the same. Let's get on the same page. It doesn't have to be an adversarial relationship. Let's work towards making sure these are safe facilities.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming in today. We've learned a lot, and I'm sure the listeners are probably getting a lot out of this too. Thank you.
No, thank you guys, because good information is a very powerful tool. So I want to make sure the townships have as much information as they want. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm saying I have information if you need it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I would like to thank Adam Dailide for joining us today. If you want to see the checklist we discussed, as well as PowerPoints and other resources available, you can find it online at michigan.gov/BFS. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, or if you have any questions about the show or the topics we covered, you can find us at michigantownships.org. Have a great day.